I just want you to clear this up. Earlier, you said that you were appointed as well because 3 airports were national key points, am I right?
Right.
And you are now a national key point official.
Correct.
Without being vetted.
Well, I think at that stage, they didn't require vetting. It only came later.
National key point?
Yes. At that time, National Key Points Act did not require the people to be vetted.
And anyway, I won't be surprised. I'll just make a comment on that. I mean, you had no any qualification, formal education when you were appointed as a group executive. Am I right?
Well, there were no qualifications in the field of aviation security other than the ICAO certificate, which I had.
Yeah, no. Because it's a clarity question. I'll ask you tomorrow. What I'm saying is, remember, we agreed earlier that the post was advertised. That's what you said.
Correct.
And the requirements, you don't remember what were the requirements?
26 years ago, there was an advertisement. A person had to be competent at the job and had to demonstrate a proven knowledge of aviation security. I can't remember what else.
Yeah, it's fine, because remember that they recruited you from property development and tourism company. You had no experience of that. And as well,
no,
earlier,
sorry, just...
You had no experience of security.
Yes, I had experience of security.
That forensic security you're talking about, your company.
Pardon?
Your company. The experience was from your company.
Airports company, you mean?
No. I'm saying the experience you had, was it from your own company?
Chairman, I had worked as a country manager for Chubb Security.
Yes, I'm aware. It says so, yes. Yeah, and you were running your property development company and the tourism company.
Well,
at the same time.
The tourism companies, Chairman, were non-executive positions.
Yes.
I wasn't running those companies. They would have had executives that ran those companies. I had a non-executive position where I was invited to contribute because of my knowledge in the tourism industry.
Yeah, no, it's fine. We are talking more about this. What I'm saying to you, what I want to put it to you, when I want a clarity on this one. Remember, you said to us that some of your people you trained, the 1,500 people, some went to PAL, college or what? Am I right?
No, I went to PAL.
Only you?
It might have been some of the others who went there, but they did their training in Johannesburg.
Yeah, but at the later stage. Okay. I wanted that only for you to say to us that the each which is asking you, now I think on paragraph 29, where you said you put up 70 hours and 80 hours at border policing, between both roles, it doesn't make sense.
Why not?
You said there were 13 airports, am I right?
No, 10 airports.
10 airports, yes. The 3 were. And now you were able to run that as well and the border.
I worked 70 to 80 hours a week. By the way, still do.
When?
Okay, Honorable Member, let's proceed.
It's fine. We'll see tomorrow, Chair.
Honorable Malema.
Thanks, Chair. The evidence leader is leaving a very important point. She tried to ask you about Jecki Selebe in relation to the cancellation of that big contract.
Mm-hmm.
And you have not said anything except that funny things started happening to you, and policemen that are reporting to him, I would imagine, it's a national commissioner of police report to him, went to arrest Ramano, and they said no, he's an illegal foreign. So I don't know. I don't see where does Jecki Selebe get in relation to this cancellation of this contract.
Okay, I'll repeat what I said earlier, Chairman, which is that Jecki Selebe attended a meeting which had been arranged by Andre Price, who at the time was the Deputy National Commissioner for Operations. And the purpose of the meeting was to inform AXA that this is after we sent a letter of cancellation to Kusalani Security. It was like 3 days later. The purpose of the meeting was to inform us that he, Jecki Selebe, was going to arrange for the cabinet to take a decision to move the National Key Points Act responsibility from army to police. And because of that, he wanted a situation where the current security would not be fired, but they would still be in place. Their contract would not be terminated. So as a result of that, as I said earlier, we had a meeting internally in AXA, and a decision was taken that we could not accede to that request for a number of reasons, and the main reason being that they were undersupplying on the posts, they were committing fraud, they were committing corruption, and they were leaving gates open, and they were allowing major security issues to take place.
No,
at the
I
airport.
understand that. I want to know, did Jecki Selebe say with his mouth, do not cancel a Kusalani security contract
Yes.
in that meeting?
Yes.
What evidence do we have about that?
It was a meeting. I didn't record it. I
The
didn't.
minutes?
Pardon?
Are the minutes of that meeting?
There were letters sent. 25 years ago, I don't have those letters now.
No, not letters. In
No,
the
there were
meeting.
letters sent confirming what he had said and confirming that AXA had taken a decision to go ahead and cancel the contract anyway.
And then the last question from me, you never had a vetting certificate to be such a senior person dealing with aviation security at a national key point.
There was no legal requirement for a vetting certificate at that time.
That's fine, but you never had a vetting.
I never had one because there was no legal requirement for one.
No, that's fine. Whether legal requirement or not, you never had a vetting.
As I said,
You were never vetted in your entire life.
as I said, I never had a vetting because there was no legal requirement.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, no, thanks, Chair. No, Mr. O'Sullivan, may you please extricate me from this confusion? Earlier, when I asked you about security clearance, you confirmed that you did not have it. And then when the council asked you
Leave that copy.
about your dismissal, you said, should I wait for you? Can I proceed?
Thank you.
When the council asked you about your dismissal, and then you confirmed that you were dismissed by Jecki Selebe, by Mr. Jecki Selebe, because you had no security clearance. And the justification, according to your logic, for not having a clearance, a security clearance, is that there was no legal requirement at the time. Is that correct?
So, almost correct.
Yeah. Now, what precipitates my confusion here is that I find it very ironic that Mr. Selebe can dismiss you on the basis of a requirement which is not prescribed by the law.
So, Chairman, I can explain that. First of all, Jecki Selebe didn't dismiss me.
No, terminated your contract.
He didn't terminate my contract. My contract wasn't a contract with the police. My
Yes.
contract was a contract with Airports Company South Africa. And what happened was Jecki Selebe first attempted to have the National Key Points Act changed so that the National Key Points would report to the police. And the next thing he did, he went to NICOC, and he got them to change the regulations so that everybody that sat on the National Aviation Security Committee would have to have security clearance. So they brought in a new regulation. And I couldn't meet that regulation because I didn't have security clearance.
So it became a requirement
It became a requirement
at a later stage.
Yes, after I was
So at the time when you were appointed, it was not a requirement.
correct.
That is your logic.
That's a fact.
Oh, thank you, Chair.
I want us to take a break, Kawazela, at what time?
I think this part is almost done. So I think we should be done by past to take a break.
Okay.
Mr. O'Sullivan, if I can just then maybe just to wrap up this part of your evidence, you say that, I'll just read it into the record. Under Selebe, this is at paragraph 37. Under Selebe, the police was effectively captured by the criminal underworld. I'll give you an opportunity to just give your final comment. With many criminals having friends in the police to keep them out of prison, the growing trail of evidence and media exposés were starting to take their toll on the relationship between Selebe and President Thabo Mbeki. This is very similar to what has been testified regarding the events that led up to the 6th of July. The narrative is quite similar. However, in 2006 and 2007, President Thabo Mbeki tried to help Selebe in the return of securing his own political future in Polokwane. And it goes on, it can be read into the record. The question that I have specifically in relation to that paragraph, just to be, for the sake of completion, you then go on to say that prior to December 2007, there was a coordinated effort by President Mbeki and an overseas-based agent, Mr. Andre Pienaar, to save Selebe on the one hand, yet arrest and charge Zuma on the other hand. They failed. President Mbeki and Pienaar's plans fell apart at the ANC elective conference in Polokwane. And you complete your paragraph by stating that the disbanding of Scorpions was intended to curtail high-profile corruption investigations, particularly with regard to those near and dear to the senior politicians. My question for you in respect of that paragraph 37, it's quite convoluted and a lot can be said about that paragraph, is how did your in your view, what was the impact of Mr. Selebe's tenure as commissioner on the integrity of police and services?
Chairman, I became aware of appointments that were being made in the police of individuals being promoted into positions that they weren't suitable for. For example, Richard Mdluli was made the national head of crime intelligence. There were other appointments. I can't remember the names of the people now, but people were being appointed that weren't qualified. And I think it became apparent that from the evidence and the statements I took, that these things were happening because we had a corrupt chief of police. So I intensified I didn't believe that South Africa would benefit from having a corrupt chief of police. And I also didn't believe it would be in the interests of South Africa to have a corrupt police chief allowed to continue in return for arresting and charging a person that had aspirations to become the president of the country. For example, Jacob Zuma. And I felt that this kind of activity cried out for intervention. So I stepped up my investigations, and the rest is history. I managed to get sworn statements from witnesses linking Glenn Agliotti to drug trafficking, linking Glenn Agliotti to counterfeit cigarette importation from Zimbabwe, and linking Glenn Agliotti to payments being made to Jecki Selebe.
How did you specifically uncover the drug trafficking that Agliotti was involved with? Could you expand?
Sorry, Chair, before that. On a point of correction, Richard Mdluli came head of crime intelligence under President Zuma and Natim Teto, not under President Mbeki.
Sorry, Chairman, Richard Glooly was appointed not National Head of Crime Intelligence. Thank you for assisting me there. He was appointed Provincial Head of Crime Intelligence in Gauteng by Jecki Selebe. Thank you for pointing that out to me.
Just for the purposes of the committee, at page 74 of the annexures, it's B74, you have enclosed a report which details the specific persons that you say were involved in the various criminal activities. However, my question to you at this stage is, you say that you uncovered drugs, drug trafficking.
Correct.
In the timeline where we are, you have left your role as head of security at AXA. You are now back in business and also doing reservist work.
No.
How? Yes.
I was no longer reservist, Chair, because Jecki Selebe terminated my role as a police reservist. And he inspired the need to terminate my role as head of aviation security. So I had no police work after that.
What were you doing at the time?
Property development.
What you say that you were investigating various things. Why were you investigating as a property developer?
Because I wanted to live in a country where there's a rule of law. I wanted to live in a country where a person who did his job well wouldn't be fired because somebody wants to commit the offense of corruption without being caught. I wanted to live in a country where security contracts were not given to the person that paid the highest bribe, but they were given to the company best suited to provide the service, and that would make the airports safe. I didn't want to live in a country where something tragic should happen, for example, like 911. I didn't want to live in a country where you could go to the police station to open a case and the criminal that committed the offense would get away with it because he paid a bribe to the police. I realized by 2003 that we were on a slippery slope, and the best way to get off that slippery slope was to bring back some ethics into the police.
Yeah. You were at the point, I actually derailed you by asking a different question, but you were about to explain what you uncovered, how you uncovered. It's not necessarily specifically about Glenn Agliotti, but it's more about your investigative work into drug trafficking. And you were about to expand on how you managed to uncover drug trafficking, which Glenn Agliotti had been involved in.
Yes, Chairman, obviously you get somebody phones you, gives you information. I think it became common knowledge that I was looking into Jecki Selebe. And you sniff around and you get information, but you can't prove anything. But somebody gave me a tip-off that actually, if you want information, this fellow Glenn Agliotti is involved in drug trafficking, and this is how he does it. But I had no evidence. So I decided to go and get that evidence. And I was given the name of the company and the name of the person that managed the company that imported the narcotics and distributed the narcotics. So once I had that information, I then realized, well, hang on a minute. I can go to that company and see if they can provide evidence. So I arranged a meeting. It just coincidentally happened.
It sounds like you stumbled upon that evidence, but in
Yes.
fact, you were investigating the former commissioner.
Correct.
Okay.
So it just so happened that when I was a police reservist, I had been running a drug-free schools project in my spare time. And that drug-free schools project resulted in us, a team of us, going around all the schools and explaining to the children how drugs are bad for you.
When did you start that project?
That would have been the mid-90s.
whilst you were a reservist.
Correct.
Okay.
And one of the schools I went to was Houghton Primary School. We went to a lot of schools. We felt it was important not just to focus on high schools, but to also focus on primary schools, because primary school leavers become high school students. And whilst there's probably not much drugs being sold at primary schools, once they get to a high school, the drugs are being sold there. And we decided that the best thing to do is start with one level of education for the primary schools and another one for the high schools. And obviously the education for the high schools was more age relevant, and the education for the primary schools was also age relevant. And as a result of this interaction with the primary schools, one of the schools I went to, I mentioned, was Houghton Primary School. And the headmaster there happened to be the brother of the father of the guy that was running the transport company that was moving Glenn Agliotti's drugs around.
What was the name of the person who was moving the drugs around?
Anthony Dormel.
Okay.
So I arranged a meeting with Anthony Dormel's father, which is Chris Dormel. And we had a meeting at their house, be about 20 years ago, maybe more. And we had a meeting at the house. And when I had that first meeting, I suggested that I would like to have a meeting with the son. And I explained to them exactly why. That I'd want this son to understand what's happening with the stuff that he's moving around. Now, we had that meeting and he agreed that actually he always suspected that there was something wrong, but he didn't know what. And he agreed to set out chapter and verse. And as a result, we went to a shipment that he had stored at a warehouse on the East Rand. And there was about 200 million rands worth of drugs there.
What did you do with that information? Once you got to the scene, what was your first reaction?
My first reaction was to take a sworn statement from the guy, because what you always like to do is make sure you get something in writing.
Okay, so you got a sworn statement, and what was the next step?
Then I went back to the Scorpions, who I'd met with a couple of years earlier, and I said, listen, I think we've now got something.
So you reported this drug bust to the Scorpions?
They did the drug bust. I didn't do the drug bust.
Okay. So you accompanied the Scorpions to a venue where there was an operation undergoing?
No, I didn't do that either.
Okay.
What I did was I showed them the sworn statement I had from this individual, and I asked them, would they be prepared to meet with this individual and take this matter over? And they agreed to do that. And then I introduced them. We had a meeting at McDonald's in East Rand Mall. We had a meeting at McDonald's in East Rand Mall. And that would have been about 95, maybe 96. I can't remember the exact year. And we had a meeting there, and we sat there for 4.5 hours where they interrogated this fellow. And
what was the outcome?
They made a decision to mount an operation.
Okay.
And the operation they mounted lasted for a month or two. And then they busted them and they arrested them all. And then they arrested Glenn Agliotti.
And what was the final, the ultimate consequence for Mr. Selebe?
The ultimate consequence for Mr. Selebe was that he was convicted of 6 counts of corruption and sentenced to 15 years in prison.
From the investigations that you would have conducted, what did you actually discover?
What do you mean?
What came out of your investigations? You said that all of these things that you've been testifying about are things that were on this, like almost on the side. It's not what you were necessarily investigating. The person that you were after was Selebe. But we've spoken about the various things that have came out of the investigations, but not specifically linking to Commissioner Selebe.
Yes, so what happened was I was getting some challenges, shall we say. I got a tip off that there would be an attempt on my life, that I would be murdered. So I started taking more precautions. And then I got a tip off that actually, they decided they couldn't get to me, so they would murder my family. So I moved my family out of the country. And that was in 1996. And then the Scorpions, through their investigation, had dealt with the drugs, the 200 million rands worth of drugs. They'd arrested a number of people. Some of them pleaded guilty and went to prison. They arrested and charged Glenn Agliotti, and they arrested and charged another gentleman by the name of Clinton Nassif, and they entered into plea bargain agreements where they agreed to plead guilty in terms of Section 105A of the Criminal Procedures Act. They agreed to plead guilty and get a suspended sentence and then give evidence about other activities. And the other activities they gave evidence about were the payments that they had made to Jecki Selebe.
Okay. At page 14, at the top of your statement, you say, based on the case I had assembled against him, speaking about Selebe, the then President Kgalema Motlanthe terminated Selebe's contract. In 2010, Selebe was convicted and sentenced to 15 years. This paragraph implies that it was as a result of the investigation that you had conducted against Mr. Selebe.
Yeah,
Is that correct?
Perhaps that's a little bit too much, because in fact what I had done, I carried out an investigation which triggered the production of the evidence which led to Jecki Selebe being arrested and charged.
Okay.
So if it's like anything else, I had started work which became the catalyst for the criminal charges which he faced.
What was the motivation for you investigating him?
As I said earlier, Chairman, I wanted to live in a country where there's a rule of law. I didn't want to live in a country where a chief of police could be so corrupt that he could enter into an agreement that would assist a sitting president to arrest and charge a future possible president. Because I felt that that was like completely wrong, regardless of what and at the time, I didn't know the then who became President Zuma, I didn't know him from a bar of soap. So I had no knowledge.
Would it be fair to say that as a result of Mr. Selebe not granting you security clearance, you then investigated him? What would your comment be to that statement?
Yeah, I think that's not correct. And the reason it's not correct is because it's like a domino effect, isn't it? If you don't do this, this will happen, then that will happen, then that will happen, then that will happen. He was going behind my back and having secret meetings with a view to having me dismissed. Why? Because we refused to kowtow to this idea of allowing his friend. In fact, I went a step further. The criminal case I opened against his friend resulted in his friend going to prison for 5 years. So he just badly wanted me out of the way. And because of the lawlessness of that conduct over 2 or 3 years, I just decided, no, the country doesn't need a commissioner of police who's involved in that type of criminal activity. So I took it upon myself to do the preliminary investigations. And when I handed it to the Scorpions on a plate in 1990, whatever, 5 or 6, there were prima facie evidence, but there was more than that.
Would you say there's a relationship between Commissioner Selebe's arrest and the disbandment of the Scorpions?
I'd say absolutely, without a doubt. Part of the problem, Chairman, is that the Police Service Act makes it clear that no police official may be an active politician. And at the time, Jecki Selebe was the Commissioner of Police. He was also a member of the National Executive Committee of the ANC. So now suddenly the rules relating to the Police Service Act were being flouted. And not only that, you heard about all these so-called spy tapes. And the spy tapes make it clear that there was a concerted effort on the part of certain persons, one of them being the then head of the Scorpions, a chap by the name of Leonard McCarthy. Because the spy tapes show his conversations with a person by the name of Andre Pienaar, who was based in London. It demonstrated that their plan, and they used code words, but it was all unpacked quite nicely. And they used these code words to show that actually we must get Selebe off the hook and get Zuma on the hook. And in the process, the problem they had was this individual by the name of O'Sullivan. And in those spy tapes, it states categorically, let's not worry about O'Sullivan. We'll bring somebody in that will deal with him decisively. Now, I thought, wow, this is heavy stuff. So I felt that, no, I did the right thing. The country should benefit from a police service with an honest chief of police. And that's what I expected to see. Because if you have an honest chief of police and a hardworking chief of police, you would expect that the people, that the whole thing ripples down and you have a good police service.
Thank you, Mr. O'Sullivan. Lastly, you say that you got this information from spy tapes, but you were no longer a police reservist. You were also no longer the head of security at AXA. In what capacity were you able to access these spy tapes?
No, well, I didn't access the spy tapes. What happened was, I'm trying to remember her name now. Nomkhobo Jiba. She was the acting national director of public prosecutions. And after Jecki Selebe had been arrested, she was suspended. And she was suspended before his trial had got cracking. She had been suspended. Now, we have to turn the clock back a little bit. Because before Jecki Selebe had been criminally charged, they had gone to see the president. The Scorpions had gone to see the president to say, we have a warrant of arrest for the Commissioner of Police. It wasn't the Scorpions, sorry. It was the National Director of Public Prosecutions, a gentleman by the name of Vusi Pakoli. And he went to see the president together with Garinal, who was the provincial head of the Scorpions. And they went to see the president and they said, we have this warrant which has been issued. And before we execute the warrant, we wanted to inform you as a courtesy that we intend to arrest the Commissioner of Police. And Thabo Mbeki then had a meeting with Bridget Mbandla, who was the Minister for Justice. And the Minister of Justice immediately suspended Vusi Pakoli. And then after this suspension, the provincial head of crime intelligence was instructed by Jecki Selebe to start tapping the phones.
Mr. O'Sullivan, I really apologize for interrupting you. Where can I find this information? Do we have evidence to that effect where these meetings took place? Do you have minutes to that effect?
So, Chairman, it's common cause. I'm sorry to have to say, but if you go back in time, it was all over the newspapers. It's common cause that Vusi Pakoli was suspended, pending an inquiry to determine his fitness to be in office. It's common cause that this all happened in a very short period of time. You had the Polokwane conference, then you had the, immediately after the Polokwane conference, President Mbeki was still the president.
Thank you, Mr. O'Sullivan. Just to bring you back to what the question actually was, the question was, how did you get to know about the conversations that were where spyware was used? That was the specific question.
They were published in the media.
Okay, thank you.
I think either the Mail and Guardian or the Times. They were
Thank you.
published and they quoted from it.
So you read them in the media.
And not only that, I spoke to the journalist
Okay.
and he sent me a copy of the tapes, not the tapes, but the transcript of the tapes, because they.
But that your source basically was the media. That was the
Correct.
question. Thank you. Thank you, Chairperson.
Thank you so much. I was